Good evening. If you want to come on in, find a seat. We are going to get started. I think we'll have a few more folks trickling in here. Of course, this time of the day around our area, there's traffic. And so we've got folks trickling in. But looking forward to tonight. And yesterday was just great. Heard a lot of great things from many folks. And many folks have shared the teachings and with some of their friends. And what a blessing that's been. And of course, tonight and yesterday is all being recorded on YouTube. And we're putting it in a playlist so it's real easy to find. If you'll just look for In the Beginning on our YouTube channel, and you will be able to find that. And thank you for coming out on a Monday night. And I know many of us got things going. And so we're not going to waste any time. We're going to jump right into things. I'm going to pray, and Dr. Brown did say after the first session, we'll have a little 5-minute, let you stretch a little bit, and if you do have to slip out, use the bathroom, go for it. We have coffee out there if you need coffee, not that you'll need the caffeine because it's engaging and exciting, but if you do need some caffeine because it's been a long day, you can get some coffee out there. But I think tonight is going to be the best presentations of the 5 that we've had because Dr. Brown's mom and dad are here with us. And so you know it's going to be good. It's good to see Pastor Brown here. Now he's nervous, so it may be the opposite. But let me pray, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Brown. Father, thank you for the last couple of days and the opportunity, Lord, just to learn more about you and how amazing you are in your creation. And, Lord, all the things that went into it. Thank you for resourcing us, Lord, to be able to give an answer, Scripture says, and be able to kind of fight back, I guess, against some of the crazy ideologies of the world. Again, thank you for Dr. Brown, his family, their ministry, and what you have called them to do. And Lord, I pray that you'd speak to us and challenge us again tonight. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
We got a lot of ground to cover as usual, so I'm going to dive right in. How many of you were here yesterday? Great. Then the introduction just keeps getting shorter and shorter. Hi, I'm Joel. I do science. Okay, let's get started. I work for the Creation Research Society, and each night I want to tell you something a little more about what we do. One of the things we do is what I call molecular paleontology. So I am the beginning to become a paleontologist. My background is in molecular biology. Here's a dinosaur bone I'm going to pass around. This is a sauropod rib, a fragment from a sauropod. A sauropod is a long-necked dinosaur, like Littlefoot from the Land Before Time. Okay. In this sauropod rib, you're going to find little holes drilled because as a molecular paleontologist, we care about what's inside the bone. So that's what those cores are. I'm not going to have you start with this. Pass that around. One of those sides has been sectioned and smoothed so you can see a cross-sectional view of that dinosaur bone. This is our team and my family up in Glendive, Montana, where we were doing a dinosaur dig last year. Dinosaur dig, this is what it looks like. This is from the crew. You just lie on the ground a lot and dig up dinosaur bones. So that's a Edmontosaurus, a duck-billed dinosaur, like Ducky from Land Before Time. That's a rib from a duck-billed dinosaur. This is Micaiah holding a T-Rex tooth that he dug out of the ground. Those are apparently worth about $2,000 an inch. And so the museum said, we're going to keep that one. Now, we weren't there just for fun. What we were actually doing was carving up some of these bones using sterile conditions so that we could store those bones and save them for later, bring them back to the lab, and analyze them for DNA. So this is one of the bones that we've analyzed for DNA. The objective of our research is to find dinosaur DNA, which you might not know nobody has ever found before. You might think from Jurassic Park that dinosaur DNA has been found. No, it hasn't. Most scientists don't believe it exists because DNA doesn't last 66 million years. And they're right about that, by the way. It doesn't last 66 million years. But we believe these dinosaurs died out during the flood about 4,500 years ago, so we're trying to find dinosaur DNA. That's what we do at the Creation Research Society. I'm going to put this up at the end and in between our sessions. This is how you can be involved. If you just want to know what's going on, sign up for the free newsletter. If you want to become a member, so we are looking and scouting out Scientists, if you're a scientist with a graduate level degree in some field of science, you should be a member of the Creation Research Society. We are stronger together. And then if you love what we do, support the work. All the work we do, we don't get government funds for our research, so the research is made possible by the donations of God's people. So thank you for that. But that's not why we're here. We are here to answer a question. When you look around at the creation, you see these giant nebulae, stars, and galaxies, all the way down to the tiny stuff, the DNA, the bacteria, the molecular motors. You cannot help but ask, where did this all come from? Well, if you turn to the very first verse of the very first chapter of the very first book of the Bible, you will find these words, in the beginning, God created. We're going to call this the biblical worldview, which is summed up nicely in Exodus chapter 20, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. We summarize this, in the beginning, God. But as you know, that's not the only idea out there. In the biblical worldview, we have some core beliefs. The glasses that we wear. The 2 core beliefs that I boil it down to, these are my core beliefs. Number 1, there is a God. Number 2, the Bible is God's word. But not all people wear those glasses. The second view we call in the beginning goo, straight out of Star Trek. This is the evolutionary worldview. They too have core beliefs. Stop distracting me. In the evolutionary worldview, their one core belief is materialism, which briefly summed up means no God allowed. All right. You plug in these 2 worldviews, you're going to come up with different timelines for where this all came from. In the biblical worldview, about 6,000 years ago, God created everything. About 4,400 years ago, there was a flood that destroyed everything. About 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ came to earth, and here we are today. In the evolutionary worldview, about 14 billion years ago was the Big Bang. We talked about that. About 4.6 billion years ago, the earth formed. 3 billion years ago, the origin of life. That was last night. And then the modern evolution of man about 3 million years ago. This is complex stuff. Things that are different are not the same. So one of them is wrong. These are different stories of our past. They cannot both be right at the same time. I'm not trying to prove the biblical worldview to you. It's fundamentally faith-based. However, along the way, you are seeing incredible evidence that you are no accident. One of the main things we're pointing out is that when we look critically at the evolutionary worldview, it too is faith-based, and it takes a lot of faith to believe in that story. So these are the 3 pillars we've been looking at: cosmic evolution, organic evolution, Darwinian evolution. You are welcome to believe in those. I just don't have enough faith to believe in cosmic evolution or organic evolution. We're now turning our attention to that 3rd pillar in part number 4, chutes or ladders. How many of you have played the game Chutes and Ladders? Okay, good. Then you already know how this all works. You might not realize it yet, but you do. All right, do you remember all the way back to, when was that? Yesterday? We asked this question, do you believe in aliens? And Pastor Andrew was back there kind of wringing his hands like, oh great, this guy's talking about aliens? And I said, how should you respond to this question? What do you mean by aliens? All right, now comes this question. Do you believe in evolution? And your response is, what do you mean by evolution? So that's really what we're unpacking in this session this evening, the first one. I'm going to tell you the conclusion at the beginning. I don't always do that, but I think tonight it's helpful to tell you the conclusion at the beginning. Chutes or ladders? Here's the deal. Both the biblical and the evolutionary worldviews believe in change over time. Here's the difference. In the biblical worldview, we believe that God created everything in 6 days and it was very good, and it's been downhill ever since. Cancer, mutations. In the evolutionary worldview, they believe that things started as goo, and it's been ladders uphill ever since. Do you see the difference? Okay, so that's where we're going. I like to start with a simple question just to get the gears turning. Did God create chihuahuas? Maybe we should ask, would God create chihuahuas? Okay, so I heard a bunch of people say, when I said, did God create chihuahuas? You said no, but wait a second. The Bible says, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. Is a chihuahua on the earth? Okay, so why did you say no? This is a really interesting question, right? I actually agree with your answer. God did not create chihuahuas directly. So where'd they come from? Well, let's unpack that. I'm going to read several verses. I'm going to read the white text. I want you to read the yellow text. Genesis chapter 1. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly, and every winged fowl. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth. And God made the beast of the earth and cattle and everything that creepeth upon the earth. And God saw that it was good. Did anybody see the word chihuahua? No, but what word did you see? After his kind. So this tells us a little bit about biology, a little bit about the origin of species. God created different kinds of animals. And let's see what happened to those kinds. So God did not create all the different breeds of dogs. There's the Chihuahua. It was first recognized as a breed in 1904. There are over 200 dog breeds recognized by the American Kennel Club. So things do change over time. If you went back in time and looked at Noah's Ark as they were unloading on the mountains of Ararat, you wouldn't have seen a single one of these dogs come off that ark. But they all came from somewhere. So they came from the dog kind. And within that dog kind, there was genetic variability. And somebody decided they wanted to selectively breed for a dog of small stature, high-pitched bark, and larger-than-life personality, and they created the Chihuahua. But all that genetic information was in the original dog. And how do we know that? Well, you can actually take a gray wolf, which is essentially a wild dog, and I say essentially a wild dog because you can cross it with a domestic dog, and you see how one is called Canis lupus, one is called Canis familiaris. That's the scientific name. They're different species, but you can breed them and get a wolf dog. It's a real thing. You can actually, if you had enough time, you could start with a pair of gray wolves and carefully, selectively breed and get all those 200 breeds that we have today. In other words, things do change over time. So what is a species? Here's our Canis lupus wolf. And we group biology into these different categories. We have the species category. Species are grouped into a genus, which is grouped into a family, which is grouped into an order, which is grouped into a class, phylum, kingdom, domain. Now here's how we group the wolf. It's in domain Eukarya, kingdom Animalia, the animal kingdom. Phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, the mammal class. Order Carnivora, the carnivore order. Family Canidae, genus Canis, species Lupus. That's how we group it. There are actually 8 different species in this genus. So you see the dog is in there, the timber wolf, gray wolf, etc. Well, guess what? These are all 8 different species. Did God create 8 different dog species in the Garden of Eden? No. These are all related to each other. And here's how we know. These red arrows, they represent hybrids between these different species. You see how they can all cross-breed with each other? These are known hybrids between these species. This tells us a lot about how God created. He created original kinds with genetic variability to produce all these. Let's go one step further. Here's the gray wolf, here's the coyote. You can breed those together and you get a coy wolf. It's a real thing. But there's a limit. Is there anybody in here that's 5 years old or younger? Any 5-year-olds? 5-year-olds? Samuel, can you help me for a moment? Okay, look at the screen. I have a question for you. I'm going to show you 4 things. Which one is not like the others? I have a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. Which one is not like the others? He must be homeschooled. So obviously, the banana is a different kind of organism. So that's what we're talking about. God created a banana kind, which is different from the dog kind. So if you took all of these modern dog species and you could go back in time, they had a common ancestor, and guess what it was? It was a dog. Right? That's how creation biology works. We can call this the dog kind. Here's the catch. This is very important. You could start with a wolf. You could generate a chihuahua. Could you start with a chihuahua and breed a wolf? Information has been lost. Those are the shoots. It's been downhill. The chihuahua is swimming in the shallow end of the gene pool. You cannot go back the other direction. All right, so now are you seeing the idea of chutes and ladders? So we see chutes since creation, and those have created all the species. Let's look at a few more examples. We have horses, Equus ferus, zebras, Equus burchellii, donkeys, Equus asinus. You can take a donkey and a horse, breed those together, and you get a mule. So part of the same created kind, they're able to interbreed. You can take a zebra, cross it with a donkey, and you get a zonkey. They can interbreed. And that tells us these are all part of the same created kind. So we'll call that the horse kind. You can take, we have a black bear, Ursus americanus, a polar bear, Ursus maritimus, and a grizzly bear, Ursus arctos horribilis. Someone had fun with that name. So here's your homework assignment. I want you to try this at home. You can take a grizzly bear, cross it with a polar bear, and what do you get? A growler bear. That's a real thing. This happens in the wild. Where their ranges overlap, you get naturally occurring growler bears. So these are all part of the same created kind. They can interbreed. We call this the bear kind. But there are limits. You're never going to get a Kangarayan or a Xyno or a Spog, as cute as that would be. So we have cats. They all descended from a common ancestor, the cat kind. Bears descended from a common ancestor, the bear. Horses, common ancestor, the horse. Things do change over time. This is little change. This is variation. This is adaptation within a kind. But where did all of these different kinds of animals come from? That's really what we want to know. Especially if you say no God allowed, you have a lot of explaining to do. Which brings in this concept of Darwinian evolution. They say, of course, that goo descended over time and changed and adapted and was naturally selected to produce everything that we've talked about. All the bears, the dogs, the horses, the cats. And this comes from Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, the father of the theory of evolution, he went on a voyage in 1831, traveled all around the world on the HMS Beagle. He was the naturalist on board, so he went and studied the different animals around the world. He came back to his little office in England. This is his home, and he almost never left after that for the rest of his life. He pretty much stayed right there. This is his office, and he wrote a very, very famous book on the origin of species by means of natural selection. 1859. This book is certainly one of the most influential books in the world. I think it's really interesting, though, to look inside of it and see some of the things that he saw. Remember I told you part of evolution is true? Well, that's the part that I've already been telling you about. Things do change over time. And he saw that. He noticed it. Let me illustrate it. This is one of the things that he found on his travels. He found a whole bunch of different varieties of finches on the Galapagos Islands. So you had finches with large beaks, small beaks, short beaks. And he said, aha, things do change over time. And we look at that and say, well, that's little change. That's variation within a kind. Here's what he wrote in his book. In regards to ducks and rabbits, I do not doubt that they all have descended from the common wild duck and rabbit. Here's what he's saying. Ducks probably all had a common ancestor, and it was a duck. Rabbits probably all had a common ancestor, and it was a rabbit. Even that rabbit. And that rabbit. There is a rabbit inside of that somewhere. And we look at that and say, okay, big deal. That's little change. But that's what he saw. And then he took a huge faith leap. And here's what he said. Therefore, I should infer from analogy that probably all the organic beings which have ever lived on this earth have descended from some one primordial form. That's what he's talking about now. So he took observational evidence which was true, and then he inferred from it something that is not supported by the observational evidence. That's when you go into that faith-based worldview. This is big change. So this is why it's so important to ask. If someone says, do you believe in evolution? You now say, what do you mean by evolution? Are you talking about, which of the types of evolution are you talking about? Are you talking about the little change evolution, or are you talking about the big change evolution? In little change evolution, are you talking about variation within a kind, or the theory of common descent, that everything came from the goo? Are you talking about dogs, wolves, coyotes, or are you talking about bacteria, blue whales? Are you talking about the scientific stuff that's observable, or are you talking about this unscientific thing that's never been observed? Are you talking about shoots, no new information? Or are you talking about ladders, lots of new information? And while I call this big change and little change, that's actually a bit of a misnomer. It's not about the size of the change as much as it is about the direction of the change. New information or loss of information. But the problem is, both are called evolution. Here's why that's a problem. This is the puzzle mania syndrome. Did anybody here ever have one of these puzzle mania magazines, maybe when you were a kid? Okay, well, this puzzle mania magazine traumatized me as a child. And here's what happened. I was like maybe a 12-year-old kid visiting my grandma's house. And she gave me a puzzle mania magazine. And I opened it up, and I was doing the mazes and the crossword puzzles. And on the back, there was a little scratch game. And if you scratched these numbers and you got 3 in a row, you could get a free Puzzle Mania magazine. So I scratched the numbers, and guess what? I got 3 in a row. I felt pretty lucky. And so I showed my grandma, and she said, oh, let's get your free Puzzle Mania magazine. So she sent it in for me. And then I went back home and lived my life. Meanwhile, a month later, a box came in the mail, and I had in my hands 2 free Puzzle Mania magazines and a Puzzle Mania tote bag. I was on cloud 9. It was amazing. And I went on with life. A month later, another box arrived in the mail. And I opened it up, and there was another Puzzle Mania magazine with a bill. Now, as a scared to death 12-year-old child, I didn't know what to do with a bill in the mail, and I just hid the magazine in my closet and didn't tell my parents that I had this subscription to a Puzzle Mania magazine. And then the next month, another one arrived with another bill, and I was traumatized as a child. Until finally, I did the thing I should have done from the beginning. I told my mom, who's here tonight, and she, first, before I even told her, I called them, and with tears in my eyes, as a 12-year-old child, canceled my subscription. And then told my mom, and she gave them a piece of her mind. So here's what happened. They said, "Do you want a free magazine?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll buy that." And they threw in the whole subscription. Here's what's happening in classrooms all over the country. They say, "Oh, see, dogs, wolves, coyotes, see that change? See horses, zebras, donkeys, see that change? Do you buy that?" And they go, yeah, I buy that. Things change over time. And then they throw in the whole subscription of evolution. Let me show you some examples of this. Okay, wolf to woof. The evolution of dogs. You see how they're using the word evolution? Now, wait a second. We look at that and we say, it's still a dog. That's just variation within its kind. That's little change. Show us the big change. Here's a textbook, and in here they say evolution in action. Perfect. That's what we're looking for. Show us evolution in action. Since Darwin published his book, scientists have observed many examples of evolution in action. And then this textbook proceeds to show 3 examples. I'm going to show you all 3 examples. I'm not cherry picking them. These are the 3 examples of evolution in action. Example number 1. Finches on the Galapagos Islands have different beak sizes. We just saw that. And we look at that and say, who cares? It's still a finch. That's little change. Show us the big change. Here's example number 2. How many moths do you see on that tree? Okay, 2. One of them's a dark moth, which kind of stands out. One of them's a white moth, which blends in. So before the Industrial Revolution in the UK, this is what the trees looked like, and this is what the moths looked like. There were more white moths than black moths because they say the black moths were a little easier for the birds to pick off because they didn't blend in as well. Well, after the Industrial Revolution, the white lichen on the trees died, so the trees were dark. How many moths do you see on that tree? There's still 2, but which one stands out now? The white one. So after the Industrial Revolution, sure enough, the white ones became more common. The black ones were more common because they blended in better. The white ones were picked off, so they were rare. So there was a change in the proportion. That is evolution. Wait a second. It's still a moth. And here's the problem. Creationists have spent a lot of time kind of disputing the story itself. Like, well, actually, they glued those moths on that tree to take that picture. The correct response is, who cares? Who cares? This is exactly the type of change we would expect in an engineered creation. Okay, example number 3. In Arizona, where we're from, there's this thing called the Grand Canyon, which is an insurmountable barrier for animals to cross. So there's a population on the north side called the Abert's squirrel, a population of squirrels. Well, another population got separated from these, and they're on the other side of the canyon, and so they didn't intermix. So they started to evolve into something different. This is example number 3 in the textbook. Here is what the Abert's squirrel evolved into. A squirrel. A kaibab squirrel. And our response is, who cares? It's still a squirrel. That's little change. That's exactly the sort of change we would expect in an engineered creation, variation with a kind. Show us the big change. Well, there are 2 reasons why they will never show you the big change. 2 big problems with big change. Let's look at those 2. Problem number 1, my favorite. This is always where I park when I'm talking to people. It's because I come from a genetics background. So to me, this is like where it's at. Information. Information. So what they're saying is all of the information that programs all living things had to come from someplace. The information for the eyeball. The information for photosynthesis in plants. The information for a beetle that shoots a cannon out of its rear end. The information for echolocation in bats. The information for feathers in birds. The information for placental birth and development. The information for that. I want to just make this real concrete by showing you a piece of this information. I'm going to focus on this guy right here. That's lots and lots of new information. My favorite one is this. That's spider silk is what you're looking at. So to help illustrate this, I have a special guest that I'd like to introduce. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Choya, the tarantula. Choya, right there. Choya is a curly-haired tarantula. We love tarantulas in our house. It was my wife's idea to get as many as possible. She just considers them like extra kids, practically. So we actually have 4 different tarantulas in our house. Well, it's actually at my work. That was the agreement. So I collect tarantulas, and I love tarantulas. There's a lot of interesting things about tarantulas, and I will, if you're interested, let you hold this at the end of the night. I'm not going to do that now. Let me show you some of the neat design features of this tarantula Choya. Don't go too far. First of all, what you see up there, Micaiah, I might need your help if she crawls up my back. So stay tuned. One of the things that you'll notice if you hold her afterwards, she's got these tarsal claws at the end of each of her legs. I can feel them right now. They hardly weigh anything, but they have these little claws which they use to grab on to whatever they're climbing up. She's also got, and they kind of tickle. She's also got these urticating hairs. Micaiah, can you come? Don't move too fast. Do you guys see the silk? You can walk her right back here.
Oh my goodness. I thought she was docile.
Woo! Let's give Choya and Micaiah a hand. The last tarantula we had lived to be 15 years old. Well, at least 15 years old. We had it for 15 years. So she was a little older and more docile at that point. This one's a younger one, and it's a little fast. So good catch on that. So they have these urticating hairs, which if they get alarmed, they will brush urticating hairs. They're little javelin-like hairs that can stick into your eyes and skin and deter would-be predators. They also have an exoskeleton. So like you have a skeleton on the inside. They have their skeleton on the outside. So it's like a shell. But when they have to grow, they can't grow the shell. They have to shed the shell. And it is absolutely incredible. So here's what it looks like when a tarantula is shedding their exoskeleton. They flip over on their back, and then they just push the old shell straight off. And it comes off as an intact, complete shell. The first time our tarantula did this, we thought it was dead because it flipped over on its back. And then the next day, we thought there were 2 tarantulas in the cage because there was the exoskeleton and the original tarantula. It looks pretty grotesque, doesn't it? But then when they flip over, they have a brand new exoskeleton ready to go. But truly, the most amazing thing about spiders is this little tool in the back called the spinneret. The elaborate structure of spider silk. Spider silk is one outstanding fibrous biomaterial which consists almost entirely of large proteins. Silk fibers have tensile strengths comparable to steel, and some silks are nearly as elastic as rubber on a weight-to-weight basis. In combining these two properties, silks reveal a toughness that is 2 to 3 times that of synthetic fibers like nylon or Kevlar. Spider silk is also antimicrobial, hypoallergenic, and completely biodegradable. But here's what I find incredible. It's not magic. It's engineering. Here's the Army. They've talked about using spider silk to make body armor because of all these special properties. See all those letters on the screen? That is the genetic code, the protein amino acids for spider silk, which, when squirted out of the rear end of a spider, produces something stronger than steel and more elastic than rubber. Who programmed that? That's information. So where did all this information come from? Well, if you have a worldview that says no God allowed, here's your answer: mutations. A mutation is a change in the DNA. So what happens if you take a turtle? This is actually a picture I took of a little baby box turtle we found, and you mix in some radioactive material. What do you get? You know, right? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? That's what mutations do. They create superpowers and things. Well, here's what a mutation actually is. So there's a DNA sequence. A mutation is simply a change in the DNA sequence. According to evolution, we have all sorts of things that cause changes in our DNA. If you sit out in the sun, that sun is blasting your skin and your DNA full of UV rays, and that causes mutations. Your body fixes most of them, but if it doesn't fix them all, you can get skin cancer. And when you take an X-ray, X-rays penetrate through your body, and those X-rays cause mutations. According to evolution, mutations are essential to evolution. Every genetic feature in every organism was initially the result of a mutation. Let's be explicit about what they're saying. That spider silk, all of those were the result of a random mutation to create something stronger than steel. What exactly are mutations capable of? We know this. This is empirical science. We can test this. In 1926 and 27, they started shooting fruit flies full of X-rays to make mutations. Here's a normal fruit fly. They would get fruit flies with stubby wings, dark bodies, yellow bodies, curly wings, white eyes, no eyes at all, and fruit flies that look like that. What in the world is that? That's a fruit fly where it has legs growing where the antennae are supposed to be. That's a mutation. That's what mutations do. During my PhD, I spent 6 years studying mutations. So I showed you this yesterday. We have a mutant mouse embryo on the right and a normal mouse embryo on the left. Here's what we did. We would take a healthy mouse and we would shoot it full of a chemical called ethyl nitrosourea, and that chemical would cause lots and lots of mutations. So the stars represent the mutations. We would then cross this with another mouse, and we would look at the offspring. It was a little more complex than this. It went through multiple generations, and we would look in the offspring for birth defects. Now, after doing this with hundreds of thousands of mice, here's the mouse room. I said hundreds of thousands. I shouldn't have said that. Hundreds and thousands of mice. It wasn't hundreds of thousands. This is the mouse room. Each of those shoebox cages is filled with about 6 to 8 mice. Mice breed incredibly fast, which is why they're used for research. If you have a mouse, get this. This is surprising. That mouse can become pregnant, and it can have 8 to 12 babies, and those babies will be born in 21 days. When they're born, they take 21 days to wean. But as soon as they're born, they can get pregnant again. So while they are weaning the first litter, they are carrying the second litter. And as soon as the first litter is weaned, the second one drops. So they can crank out 8 to 12 babies every 21 days. If you have a mouse problem in your house, now you know why. They're incredibly prolific breeders. So we spent a long time studying mutations in these mice. And after doing this, after seeing lots and lots of mutant mice, here's what we eventually got: an extremely advanced superpower mouse. Said nobody ever. Right? Nobody even expected such a thing. Right? Modern science does not mutate things and expect them to improve, ever, until they start talking about evolution. But empirical science shows the otherwise. So this is actually what we got. We got all those different mutants. Mutations mess up genetic information. They don't improve it. So what are mutations capable of? They're capable of deleting information. They're capable of rearranging existing information. But what are they not capable of? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Sorry, but it's just not the way mutations work. Information cannot be built up by mutations that lose it. A business can't make money by losing it a little bit at a time. That's MIT biophysicist Lee Spetner. That really nails it down. Do you see what I see? I see shoots. not ladders. That is big problem number one. Let's look at big problem number two. And to help with this, I've got a special machine. This is a mousetrap. It has 5 parts to it, not that complicated. And I brought one with me. So, you probably know how this works. We've got the holding bar. We've got the hammer. We've got the trip that you put the bait on. We've got the platform, and we've got the spring. And when you put all these 5 parts together, this is not an extremely complicated machine. When you put all these 5 parts together, it performs a very useful function. Can I get a volunteer? Okay, so all 5 parts in their correct place. Along comes Mr. Mouse. Bye-bye, Mr. Mouse. Now, I have a very important question for you. Suppose you had a mousetrap and it captured 10 mice. You got that so far? Now, suppose you took one of the 5 parts away. So now you have 80% of a mousetrap. How many mice will you catch? Wait. You said 0. But you still have 80% of a mousetrap. You should still catch 8 mice. No. That's not the way machines work. This is not an extremely complex machine, but it has a special type of complexity. We call it irreducible complexity. You cannot remove any of the parts and have it still function as a complete whole. This sort of complexity shows up in designed things all over our world. Here's an airplane. Did you know that a Boeing 747, which can fly, is made up of 600 million parts which can't fly? Think about that next time you're on an airplane. Just don't think about it too hard. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's irreducible complexity. So we see this and we recognize that and we say it must have been designed. Let me show you something even more amazing. It's called the Venus flytrap. You're going to recognize a lot of the same components that were in the actual mousetrap, plus some other goodies. The Venus flytrap is really good at capturing bugs, and it does that with this set of machinery. It's got the platform, that's a leaf in this case, which is biodegradable and self-assembled. It's got these little, see those red dots? Those are little nectar secreting cells, so it produces its own bait. You don't have to put peanut butter in it. It's got these little triggers. See that hair? That is a trigger. And so if that gets hit, just like on the mousetrap, it has to be hit twice. See the red dots around the trigger? Those are little cells that secrete a stomach acid. Now, plants don't have stomachs, but this one secretes a stomach acid, so it also digests whatever gets caught in the trap. And it's got these bars that help capture and hold whatever happens to wander in. Put all these together, and here's what you get.
The Venus flytrap. Like the sundew, it makes itself very attractive, oozing nectar across the brim of each leaf. But any visiting insect had better watch out for these 6 tiny hairs. This fly has to tread carefully. If it strikes one hair, it can carry on feeding, but a timer has been set. A second strike in less than 20 seconds, and the fly is doomed. An electrical impulse is triggered, and the leaf snaps shut in just a fraction of a second. The tips lock together like prison bars. If the fly is very big or very small, it may just manage to escape. But most are trapped and die. Ten days later, the trap reopens. All that remains is a husk. The plant has finished its meal and resets itself for its next victim.
Have you ever felt so bad for a fly before? And here's the most amazing thing to me. This trap is completely self-assembled from the instructions inside of this tiny package. That's a seed from the Venus flytrap. That's a lot of information, irreducible complexity. All those parts have to be together for it to function. The flytrap, you would be infinitely more likely convincing me that that mousetrap assembled itself by chance than convincing me that that flytrap assembled itself by chance. Mutations over time. Darwin said, if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. Well, here's one, and there's biology is loaded with these types of information-bearing systems. So these are the two big problems with big change. This is why you're never going to see big change in actual empirical science. So you're welcome to believe in Darwinian evolution. Just don't call it science. Call it faith. And I don't have enough faith to believe in Darwinian evolution. So where did all of this incredible information come from? Where did all of these structures come from? Where did that programming come from? Who programmed life? I'm so glad you asked. You see, if you turn to the very first verse of the very first chapter of the very first book of the Bible, you will find these words. In the beginning, God created. And it's just as simple as that. Congratulations. You've completed parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 of In the Beginning. We're gonna take 5 minutes of questions. Then we're going to take a 5-minute break. And then we're going to come back and jump into part 5, God or Goo, the exciting conclusion. So let's open up the floor for questions. And then we'll take our break. Yes, go ahead. Favorite species of animal? I could not possibly answer that. If you could say, maybe narrow it down a little bit, favorite species of bird, cedar waxwing. Favorite species of tarantula, Mexican red-kneed tarantula. So.
Favorite invertebrate?
Tarantula, of course. So, it's a good question. What's yours?
Me? Probably the octopus, specifically the giant Pacific octopus. Probably.
Good answer. There's a lot of good choices out there. No shortage of good choices. Yes, Emily?
If you touch fly swatter plant twice in the hair, would it snap his finger?
Okay, so the question was, if you touch a Venus flytrap twice, you trigger it, will it snap your finger? It would. It'll close on your finger. It'll close on anything you put in there. but it wouldn't like capture your finger. It's not actually strong enough to like break your skin, or you wouldn't even feel it. Yeah, you would just pull your finger. You wouldn't be stuck there with your finger digesting over the next 10 days, thankfully. Yes?
We went to the Creation Museum in Kentucky, and they have a zonkey and a Zorse. So did they mutate that to make that happen, or did they just put them together?
Okay, so their Zonkey and Zorse that they have, I don't know where they got them from. So I can't answer it completely, but they would have been bred. So it's a hybrid between a horse and a zebra. That's not, you wouldn't, that's a lot easier than actually mutating them to create the appearance. Actually, you wouldn't be able to mutate them to create those appearances. So they bred them, or somebody did.
Is the mule in the same gene pool with the Chihuahua?
What do you think? No, probably not. Actually, I say probably not. Definitely not. Because you couldn't interbreed a dog with a horse. They're different kinds. They actually have different numbers of chromosomes. They have different genetic information.
When you get to a mule, they can't be bred again, right?
Yeah, and so because there have been mutations that have occurred in both the horse line and the donkey line, when they breed together, their offspring are sterile. But we consider, in general, the gold standard for determining if something's the same kind is if they are able to interbreed at all. And if they can, then we'd say, as creation biologists, that's the same kind. And you will never get a Chihuahua to breed with a horse. Yes. Last question.
How long did it take Darwin to get from the finch to humans?
So, like in his thinking, you mean? So about 2 decades between his trip and his publication of the book. So he came back from his trip, and he just holed up in his office. He also loved breeding pigeons. And when you breed pigeons, you also get a variety of pigeons. So all he does is look at things are changing over time. And the problem is, back in his day, creationists believed in something called fixity of species. So you'd have a certain species, and they said, God made it perfect, it doesn't change at all. And he went around and said, yeah, they are changing. Things are changing over time. And he was right about that variation over time. So he didn't find any evidence that goes from finch to humans. He just made mentally, after 2 decades of thinking about it, he said, well, maybe there's no God, and maybe this all happened by chance. So it was a faith leap that he took. I am a little more generous than that, but yeah, it was a belief. Yeah. All right, I see those hands. At the very end of the night, I'm going to hang around. Pastor said I can stay here till midnight answering questions. So we'll take it, but let's take a 5-minute break, stretch those legs, grab some coffee. We'll be back at